Well, good afternoon. Good afternoon and welcome to another of our webinar Wednesdays hosted by CSU Bakersfield Small Business Development Center. This is webinar number 282 on June the 28th, 2023. Thank you for joining us today. We're going to talk a little bit about some restaurant training programs. Been reading a lot of information about how more successful chain restaurants and franchises are other than mom and pops, and I'm not happy about it. So we're going to do what we can do to change some of that and get some of our great mom and pop, sole proprietor, single restaurants, independent restaurants out there doing well. So let's talk about some of the programs that we might have that can assist you today. Coming up on Webinar Wednesday next week, Maureen is delighted, producer Maureen Busher-Dang, absolutely delighted that she gets to take off for Independence Day. So we will not be here next Wednesday on July 5th, but we'll be back on July 12th with Natisha Johnson and also Nick Hill. And we'll be talking about the City of Bakersfield program that will be officially launching, I believe, on the 10th of July. Have maybe a little bit of preview, a little bit of basic information. We'll talk about the training program today on how that fits in there. But we're going to have a far more comprehensive discussion with the other two technical assistance providers for the consulting and business plan assistance. That would be Natisha from the Bakersfield College Launchpad and Nick Hill from the Kern County Black Chamber of Commerce. So that's what we'll be doing on the 12th when we come back. On the 19th, we'll have Justin Powers in. He was in earlier this spring and gave us some information on how you can use artificial intelligence and UI in your business. He'll have an update on that, as a lot has changed, as this is a dynamic area that is changing rapidly. On July 26th, Melody Goria with the HR Hotline, sponsored by the California Employers Association. So that's what's up in July, but we're still in June. So what's up today? June the 28th, 2023. So we are working with our friends at the CSUB EGO, which is the Extended Education Global Outreach Office, on campus, and have a restaurant training that's coming up. You'll be hearing from their fine presenter, Celeste Young-Ramos, in just a few minutes. But we want to actually start seeing more profitable food companies. And there's a great training program that's going to be taking place that you can attend free of charge. It can also be used to access the grant program. We will have more details coming up. So I mentioned we will be given a simple preview today of the new city grant program that will be starting in July. So don't call about it today. It's not starting today. We're not doing anything more than a simple preview, just to announce some of the areas to where you might find out if possibly you're eligible or might want to consider this moving forward. So as I say, don't call the office today. So our capital quarter is a tip on the small business debt ceiling. Yes, we have looked at ever since that big national debate on the small business debt ceiling. We've talked about what are some of the debt ceilings that small businesses face. Sure, that's, not only governments have debt ceilings, but small businesses. And today we'll have number 5 in our series since the debt ceiling crisis, and look at one of our new tips on dealing with small business and accessing capital. Our community calendar gets all the EIDL answers you want and more tomorrow. Great resource coming up for those that have the economic injury disaster loan, or are maybe even considering applying for one with all the weather-related damage and storm damage in Central California earlier this year. So we'll have some information on the upcoming EIDL program for you to get all your answers. And we'll also talk a little bit more about disaster relief as physical damage. Your application, if you experience physical damage from the spring floods, from any of the wind damage that occurred during that time, and other reasons that were related to the weather that happened in February and March. Your due date is July the 20th. So if you don't get it in by July the 20th, physical damage is not going to be accepted after that. EIDL will, and we'll talk a little bit about that. Our economic corner today reflects on a relaxing economist. So we're going to have a relaxed version of economic corner. Got the great national holiday coming up. And do we really want to talk about the economy right now? Let's talk about some resources that can help our businesses. And we'll bring our relaxing resident economist back in July. As always, your questions will be taken at the end. We'll limit the questions on the Bakersfield program, entrepreneurship program, till next time. But if you have any questions on restaurants and other issues that come up that we discussed today, let us know. Put them in the Q&A box. Any other items Maureen will be placing in the chat box for references and actually for links to particular programs and things we discussed today. But first, let's take our poll. So I guess I tried to find some fun facts related to restaurants, since, it's basically our topic today, restaurant management and some of the crazy things out there that are happening in restaurants. And so let me launch the first crazy question I found out there, statistics. And essentially, it's 7 of the top 10 grossing independent restaurants are located in what state? Is it New York, Florida, California, or Nevada? I have to tell you, this caught me by surprise, this answer. But it is 7 of the top 10 grossing independent restaurants are located in what state? Is it the great state of New York, the state of Florida, the wonderful state of California, or Nevada? 4 simple suggestions out there. I'll give you a hint. The number 1 grossing restaurant was grossing around $41 million a year, according to Toast, the point of sale, who provided these questions for us. We do have a whopping 64% of you that have already submitted and are in. And with that, we're going to end this question and share the results. And 44% of you think that it's Nevada. And maybe it's with the baseball team potentially relocating to Nevada. Nevada is back, baby. 44% of you are incorrect. I'm sorry. So New York, what a great state. Great restaurants in Manhattan, some of the finest restaurants in the world. New York City, 33% of you say New York. Sorry. Not the correct answer we're looking for. California, 22%. Sorry, incorrect. It's Florida with 0%. And I told you I was a little surprised by this, but 7 of the top 10 restaurants, grossing independent restaurants, are located in the state of Florida, with the top restaurant being actually in Miami, but Orlando surprisingly has a number on the list as well. So that is poll question number 1 as I play Stump the Band today. And we'll move to question number 2, or poll question number 2. So moving right along, and not meaning to move right along, our second poll question is going to deal with markups. So our question is going to be a markup on a particular item that is sold in restaurants. The markup of soda can be as high as what percentage? And this is according to Toast. Could it be as high as 80%, 200%, 412%, or 1,150%? So soda pop, what do you pay these days in a restaurant for soda? $2.99 for fountain drink or whatever. Probably in some places a little bit more, but is it as high as 80%, 200%, 412%, or 1,150%? So 1,150% would be 11.5 times what it cost the restaurant. And 412 would be, 4.12, most likely 5%. So those are your options. We're going to, with 57% of you, and let one more of you respond. Just because we want one more person to respond, we're going to do that. And when we get that next bump, we're going to end the poll anyway. And we're going to share the results with you. And 50% of you think that it's double. Well, 25% of you are correct, where the highest markup on soda is around 1,150%, one of the most highest marked up items in a dining establishment. So congratulations to the 25% of you out there that got 1,150%. So it's even surprised me. It's a big high markup. So there you go. You can see why a lot of promotions and a lot of things revolve around the sale of soft drinks and other beverages when it comes to dining establishments. Okay, so moving right along, the first thing we'll show you is kind of our slide from the Bakersfield Foodservice Management Program. And again, this is CSUB's Office of Extended Education Global Outreach Office. And what they are doing is they are providing the training for a free 100% online training to those looking to enter the food industry. Our special guest, Celeste Young-Ramos, will be talking about that today and will be the instructor of the class. So you get actually to hear from the instructor today, along with a lot of other topics. A lot of key financial information will be discussed in the class, marketing, and we'll find out everything from her. And of course, people that complete the course are eligible to apply for the grant funds from the City of Bakersfield, ranging from $5,000 to $10,000. So that is one thing we're going to be talking about today. But first, let's get in with our regular capital quarter, where we're talking about the debt ceiling for small businesses and factors that can limit your raise of capital. So we're down to number 5 today, and number 5 is understanding how your past debt can affect your future borrowing capacity. So yes, other items that you might have, other debt that you might have secured in the past that is still outstanding and has not been paid off, can actually affect, your application to get a small business loan in the future. So the first thing we want to do is we want to understand how your past debt can affect that future capability. And one area is in security or collateralizing business and personal assets. When you do borrow funds, a lot of those particular areas that are covered is the lender is going to want some form of security or collateral that is pledged. Hopefully it is the business assets that are being financed. That makes it a little bit easier, particularly with larger sized assets like land and building, for example. But also some of the more fixed assets can be used to secure or collateralize a particular loan. The other thing is in your loan agreements and your conventions that make up the loan that you have actually purchased or actually acquired. So one of them that comes to mind is the EIDL loan. And so what you're going to want to know is what is happening in your particular economic injury disaster loan. Remember that the EIDL was not like the PPP. It was not a forgiven loan. It came with some incredibly favorable terms, some great terms as far as small business lending, to where you could get actual 30 years of financing for generally around 3.75%. Something that we said at the time you'd never see again. But looking at those loan agreements and conventions might keep you from actually getting other types of loans in the future. So those are the things that you might want to look at. And always remember that some debt is better than others, and some could potentially need to be refinanced later on. So on the security or collateralizing business assets, remember that those assets will be tied up for future funding. And so if you have a lender who is already in place on those particular assets, it is difficult for a lender to find other assets to claim and secure for pledging and for actually using to secure the particular loan. Oftentimes they'll need to either have some type of subordination agreement or need to go behind another lender, which puts them in a less secure position in case that there is a problem with the loan. A lot of business owners don't realize that you need to personally guarantee. So the personal guarantee is really more than a reality than an option in a lot of cases. And a lot of times it'll depend on the lender, it'll depend on the program, and it'll depend on the size of the loan that you're going for if you need to personally guarantee that particular loan. And where really personally guaranteeing a loan gets a little sticky is kind of in that area to where, you have maybe partners, and then you're personally guaranteeing a loan where you might have partners that might wield more influence in the particular business than you would like or feel comfortable for. So, ideally, secure assets for the project that provides the funds. So if you're looking to expand your particular restaurant and you need some furniture and fixtures, and you need some equipment, oftentimes those funds that are actually being used in actually the expansion project or the project that you're funding can be used to secure that particular loan. And the UCC1 blanket security option. The UCC1 is called the Universal Commercial Code -1, and it's a legal document filed with the Secretary of State. And oftentimes when there aren't specific assets being actually secured, a lender will come in and just say, well, we'll just take a blanket of your entire assets. We saw this with EIDL, and there's a lot of people out there that have UCC1 filings on the economic injury disaster loan with SBA, and you need to know what is going on with those particular loan agreements and conventions. So read those and understand them. Realize that there can be some restrictive provisions that if you break, it can result in your loan being called. Your lender can say you broke the rules and regulations of our agreement. Your loan is now due and payable. And really, it's really difficult to try to find funds to actually pay off a loan that is being recalled. Lenders simply aren't in the game to pay off other lenders a debt. They want to be part of your success, be in front of your particular project, help your business expand, and not really to be there when you've had broken promises and you've had other problems that have come up. So keep that in mind, please. And remember, those arrangements can be simple to complex. So, as far as your terms, what you want to do is kind of map out a debt plan and include your payment and repayment abilities. You want to favor those that produce the least strain on your cash flow, such as an EIDL loan at 3.75% over 30 years. The payment's going to be long. You're going to be paying for it a long time, but it's going to produce the least strain that you have on your particular business. Look to pay off term loans with least favorable or refinance options. And also, avoid repaying high interest rate loans that have predetermined or prepaid loan amounts. So that is basically talking about a thing that we've talked about a little bit on here, and that is actually going in and maybe if you get maybe a loan through a lender, an online lender, whereas your interest rate is determined and your fees are determined at the beginning of that loan. So you're going to be paying that amount back no matter if you prepay that or if you don't. So if you have a 2-year term on an online loan through an online small business lender, and they come back and they'll say, yeah, we'll give you a 2-year term, and you calculate your interest rate because oftentimes it's not really displayed, it's not shown, and you see your interest rate at being 40%. And you say, I want to get rid of that thing. Well, you're going to pay that amount of interest, and by prepaying that early only increases that loan rate. And so that's our capital quarter today. Tomorrow, great opportunity to find out more about the economic injury disaster loans, about the conditions that you have. We've had a lot of interesting conditions that come up, and they're in the normal course of businesses. There have been those that want to sell. There have been sicknesses and deaths in some of the businesses. And really, it's finding out where you stand on these particular loans. If you have an EIDL loan, that is really important and can really help you with your business. So if you have an EIDL loan, knowing the details and circumstances tomorrow, join Don Golick from the district office of the Fresno office of the SBA, and Rich Mostert, who will talk about all of the great tips for managing this EIDL disaster loan. And there's a good chance that during this 27 years that are left on that particular term that you're going to want or need more capital. So get that figured out, please. Okay, so 2023, we talked briefly about the winter storm and the winter-related activities that are going on, disaster loan information. So the property damage was extended to July 20th. That's where it stands right now. We've been incredibly fortunate with this mild weather. And we could make it till Saturday without getting a 100-degree day, but maybe June 30th, it's going to happen this month. But we've been incredibly fortunate with the weather and the abilities to run a lot of the water up in the Sierras, all the melting snowfall out. And so the property damage, if you had property damage, July 20th is your date. And if you had an economic injury disaster loan, then if you have suffered an economic injury because of the storms, you can still apply for an EIDL up till January 3rd, 2024. So there's a few things on the comparisons on the loans that are available through the disaster front. One last push in July is going to be made on these particular products that are available to help those who have been significantly impacted by the disaster. So you'll see that they do make loans to small businesses. There's the economic injury disaster loan, and you're going to want to look at the far right column, and that's the disaster that we're talking about. So on the business loans, they're between 4% and 8%. Economic injury disaster loans, if you suffered one, 4%. This is the rare case where SBA will make a home loan to homeowners that have been impacted by the floods. And also, one of the key things is the mitigation. You can actually borrow funds at an incredibly low rate between 2 3/8 and 4 3/4% to mitigate and prevent future loss of the same type of damage that could occur. Our economic corner, we'll have Dr. Mark Evans joining us back on July 12th as he relaxes while some of us still work. But our entrepreneurship grant program through the City of Bakersfield is coming in July. And what that's going to be is $1.5 million that's going to be available to 163 businesses or startups in the city limits. Now, the funding is only available to businesses in specific areas, and these are identified as qualified census tracts. And we'll be going over this in great detail on July 12th. This is just kind of the primer to what's coming, or to lower qualifying individuals from an income standpoint. So the funding is not going to be available to those census tracts that are, high rent areas, such as around, our campus at CSUB in the Southwest. They're going to be qualifying lower income individuals and these qualified census tracts that we can go over. There's some areas of the downtown, et cetera. The grant applicants will need to complete a training class, and the training class we're going to preview today is going to be one of those training classes. We're going to have them get a business plan, receive advising from providers, and that includes, of course, the SBDC, Bakersfield College Launchpad, the Kern County Black Chamber of Commerce, and Cal State Bakersfield's Extended Education Global Outreach Office. Also, the eligibility requirements and eligibility use of funds are going to be extensive. So they're too far beyond the scope of what we can cover in today's webinar. Needless to say, we'll be focusing a lot of attention on this program in July. Lots of attention. These are monies that came from ARPA, the American Rescue Plan stimulus package, the very last one. And these funds come from the federal government, and there are strings attached. And again, if you apply for any of these funds, like the last round of federal funds, this is all public information. So if you don't want any of your public information shared, we're not going to get into, they're not going to share your sales and a lot of your competitive information. But the fact that you are applying, you will be on a list of if you are successfully awarded a grant in this particular program. A lot more details next month. We'll spend a lot of time on this next month. Again, the next webinar on the 12th, we'll discuss a lot of the qualifications and a lot of the training programs that are going to be provided by other providers, and including the Launchpad in the Black Chamber of Commerce here in Kern County. So that's what's coming up on that particular aspect of the grant program. Again, tomorrow's EIDL workshop is going to be happening. We've got lots of tools in the toolbox. that are still there waiting for you. Of that particular grant program, one of the conditions will be a business plan, and it will be required consulting through a provider. So you are going to need a business plan. You're going to need to talk to an advisor. An SBDC advisor is perfect for that particular job. And you're also going to need the training class, or to recently attend it and have one that's approved. Some of our other tools are HR hotline, 888-201-7101. Our last webinar in July, we'll go over this in great detail, but we're hearing good things about businesses that have been calling the California Labor Hotline for questions in that particular area. All of our webinars will be on our YouTube channel, at least all of the newer ones, and you can go to our CSUB YouTube channel and subscribe while you're there. Okay, it's time to bring in Celeste Young-Ramos. She's the founder of the Restaurant Success Center. She's also the CEO, and it's a restaurant human resource consulting firm providing restaurant owners and their managers the skills needed to grow their business, maximize profits, and to develop highly satisfied customers and employees. She works here with us at the SBDC, and she has a vast history, including several chain franchise operations, hundreds of independent restaurants, food service operators of all kinds. Over 20 years experienced with a very large franchise in Southern California, and 3 decades in the food service business. You've seen her on Webinar Wednesday before. She's back. I recommend her. Take it away, Celeste.
So I am so glad to be here, and I'm so glad to be asked to present the program and develop the program here for the Bakersfield Food Service Managers Program. As Kelly mentioned, the sponsors previously, there are grants that are going to be available from $5,000 to $10,000 if you complete the program and do your business plan and work with an advisor. So the program, I want to share with you what we're doing. It's an 8-week program, and it equates to about 2 hours of information that we'll be sharing with you each week. It'll be done through a portal through the Extended Education Global Outreach organization. And it'll be also, it's called asynchronous training. So you don't have to come on certain days. You can go on the portal and watch it at any time. You know, if you have Mondays off, you can do it on all of it on Mondays, or you can split it up over multiple days. So what I'm so excited about is that, you know, over the years, I've worked with probably close to 1,000 independent restaurant owners now. And one thing I always wondered, particularly when I worked for a very large nationally known family restaurant chain, is that we had huge departments. Like we had a whole marketing department and a accounting department, all these departments that helped keep us on the right track. And I found, like, for the independent owners, the small business owners, that they kind of were in a bubble. They didn't have all this extended exposure. And so we wanted to provide this kind of information that's going to make you successful. So we've kind of taken that knowledge that I've acquired over the years through these giant organizations and made it so that it's available to you. And so each week we have we'll have a couple topics that we're going to go through. So I'm going to go through each one of them and give you a little bit of detail about it. At the end, you can always ask some questions about it. So starting off, like in week 1, we're going to talk about setting up your company for success. So most of the people that are going to be in the program are already going to be operators, but we're going to also go over what are some of the other types of food businesses that are available that you could possibly expand through, because many businesses have restaurants, have food trucks, or they are farmers markets. Now they're going into food trucks. So we're going to discuss like the cost of entry and some of the pros and cons of each type of business. We'll also introduce that first week, the food service business plan, because that'll be one of the goals by the end of the program, is that if you have a plan already, you'll fine tune it. And if you don't have a business plan, that you'll start completing one of those. And we have a lot of wonderful resources and tools and templates, and also assistance for everyone to do it. So if it's something that you've never really done because you're a little bit afraid about it, or you don't really know what it's about, this will give you an introduction to it, and then we'll give you some one-on-one support. But businesses that have business plans usually do better because they have everything mapped out. And the one thing that I feel is the most critical thing in the business plan that I see people skip because they're a little bit intimidated is the financial projections. So often I'll have people contact me that they're already to sign the lease, but they haven't figured out whether they can even afford the lease. So we're going to teach all that, and we're going to do it in a way that's easy for people to understand. Like if math isn't your big forte, that's okay. We're going to help everyone through that. And we're also going to go through the permits and licenses, because we saw during COVID-19 that a lot of financial aid was available, but we ran into many small business owners that didn't have all the permits that they were required to have. And sometimes that blocked them or even slowed down the process. So we're going to go through those things to make sure everybody is all set and legal with everything that they need to have in place. Now, the second topic that week, we're going to go into leadership mindset. So 70% of restaurants owners started out as employees in someone else's restaurant. That was my story. I worked in a restaurant, loved it. So another partner came along, said, "Hey, why don't we start a restaurant?" I'm like, "Hey, why not?" And we operated that for 5 years, and it was very successful. But the thing is that 70% of those new small business owners, and this might even be yourself, of them, only 15% have had any type of supervisor training at all. And the biggest asset you have in your business is going to be your employees. So if you're not able to manage them and get them to provide produce the food and provide the service that you want, you're going to flounder. And the majority of businesses that close within like the first year is because they can't manage their people. They can't retain their employees. So we're going to teach you how to get your employees to respect you, to follow you. And I know it's going to be really, every time I teach that part of the class, people are like, "Oh my gosh, I wish I heard this a long time ago." And then we're going to talk to you about how to handle and prevent customer complaints, because that's the barometer of your business. So we'll teach you some easy ways to do that and have the most success and have people want to come back and have repeat visits. The second week, we'll start getting into some financials and some business information about costs. A lot of people forget that this is a business, so we have to be strong in our accounting and financial foundations if we want to grow and we want to be able to be sustainable. So week 2, we'll talk about the costs you must control to make profit. So we'll introduce the prime costs, the 2 areas that the restaurants spend the most money in. We'll also start talking about calculating your costs and speaking about them as a percentage of your net sales. So that way it's much easier when you're talking about your food cost. I ask people, "Well, how much is your food cost and labor?" And most times people can't answer me. But even better if like $5,000 I spent equates to how much of our sales. It's easier to have conversation and notice when your numbers are getting out of whack. We'll talk about how to accurately do food cost, either through purchases or through an inventory system. And then we'll also introduce occupancy costs like the triple net leases and what that actually means. And in this section, we'll give you a lot of information on what are the standard thresholds you should be in each of these areas if you want to make a profit in a food business. So I think that information in itself is going to be very worthwhile. And then we'll start talking about the accounting systems, because I find so many small business owners really just use their POS and their bank account as their accounting system. And, you know, the government requires us to follow certain standards. And so we're going to talk to you about, you know, setting up a weekly close and what kind of accounting software you might need to use and how to really use that CPA, like we've heard before about, you know, helping you to plan and figure out what's the best structure for you tax wise. We'll start looking at educating you about what are the costs in your business, like what are fixed costs, what are variable costs, what are things you can control and you should focus on. And we'll also start learning to project our sales, because the more you're able to project out in the future, the stronger your business is going to be, because you're going to be in a proactive mode instead of in a reactive mode. So you can make better business decisions. And all this is kind of leading for us to start creating a budget. And that's what smart business owners do. They create at least a quarterly budget so that they know where their business is at, where they want it to go, and they're able to rally their teams behind that. Now in week 3 and 4, week 3, we're going to get down and dirty, and I'm actually going to show you how to create an annual financial, well, we're not going to do it annual, we're going to do a quarterly one, but I'm going to sit down and show you how to do a financial projections and how to set all your costs for a 3-month period. And we'll also share with you what are the typical business category percentages for, you know, what is typical labor, what's the typical cost for utilities, all this information. So particularly if you're more in the startup and you haven't really done that kind of thing before, it's going to be really invaluable to you. And then next, we're going to go through pricing your food correctly. So the National Restaurant Association says the average restaurant that is $900,000, that's dollars sales per year. Last year, they raised their prices 8.2% over the previous year. However, food costs went up 17.1% and labor costs went up 15.5%. So the typical average restaurant saw 75% of their profits decrease. And so it's really important to know how to price your products so that you can cover the overhead as much as possible. Now, I know with inflations, you know, we all go out and eat and we see sticker shock. And the truth of the matter right now is if you're not embarrassed to say what your prices are, then you're probably not charging enough to make money in your business. So we're going to really look at breaking it down and calculating the cost of some menu items, and then talking about what are the strategies to set the pricing. The next part on week 4, we're going to start moving into using systems to manage businesses. And Kelly brought it up earlier, and he was right on point in the fact that studies show that within 3 years, 60% of restaurants that start up fail. Okay, now from my experience, some of it is undercapitalization. Okay, so you started up, but you didn't have enough money. And now more than ever, you have to know that you have to have startup costs plus your annual budget. That also has the emergency coverage fund there that can really cover all the funds for probably comfortably 1 year. Okay, rent, particularly the top 3, labor, rent, and food cost. So, so undercapitalization is a reason businesses fail. Another one is poor restaurant management. And I saw that became so clear to me in my history, being responsible for the management training of over 100 restaurants for a national chain. I really saw that, you know, you could have it, for instance, a chain restaurant and have 2 separate locations, but they might be in a different location, but they're generally the same rated lot space, okay? They have the same prices, the same look, the same food, everything is the same, but how come some flourish and some flounder? Well, I really know that it's because of how people manage. So that's why we're talking about the leadership, and that's why we're going to introduce these systems, because franchise restaurants, after 3-year failure rate, 90% survive because they have these very well-established operating systems that help you to manage the business and to make your business consistent, you know. And if you have good operating systems from the start, you'll move your business through that miserable startup phase 30% faster than if you don't. So I love systems. That's one of my specialties, because I found that if I had a system that worked well, I could develop my people better, and I could have time off. When I was off, people didn't have to call me because they could refer to the system. Okay, so if you want more balance in your work life, you got to have systems. And then we're going to talk about creating your winning team. So we'll start talking about creating an organizational chart. What should your company look like? How many employees in each position will you need to operate properly? And we'll also start helping you to develop a business network, because if you have to have employees that are supporting you, but you also have to be able to develop partnerships with your vendors and your insurance agents and your workers' comp people and all these other business vendors, that if they don't help you in the right way, you're going to struggle. So we're going to teach you how to work with them to get the most out of those relationships and make your business stronger. Then in week 5, we start talking about getting the employees, because that is crucial for your success. And as you talk to any restaurant owner out there right now, the biggest thing they always talk about is, we're short-staffed, where do we get the people? And so I'm going to share with you, like in our Attracting the Best Employees to Your Business, all the different mindsets of the people that are involved in the decision-making of an employee, whether it's the owner, the applicant, or what the other employees think about the whole process, where they could have some things that are undermining your hiring. We'll introduce making job descriptions and why they're important. We'll talk about, your job postings and all the different avenues that you have to get out there and get the word out and to attract more people. And some of these things are, these are going to be all of these lessons each week there'll be a lesson that you'll also participate in, that you can look at your business and see where you are at, and start, creating little action plans to fix some of the areas that you feel are weaknesses. And we'll talk about interviewing techniques, because there's a lot of things you can do and a lot of things you can't. And you might be surprised at some of the questions that you're not allowed to ask people in an interview. And then the next part we'll talk about is retaining employees, because, we see that everyone says it's like a revolving door. I feel that it's a revolving door because you don't know how to manage that situation, and you have to adjust your business to the current workforce. And we're going to teach you how to engage your employees so that they bond onto you and they'll stick with you longer. And we'll start talking about your training systems here, of like what you should do when you bring them on and onboard them. How should you set up your training program, and how do people learn? So I think that's going to be really invaluable for you, because every employee you turn over, they say costs you about $1,500. So that's just money down the drain, that we want to keep our profits. We worked hard for them. So week 6, we'll start then getting into the labor laws, because that's where we have people lose the most money, is because they don't understand all the labor laws that we have here in California. So we'll take you through wages and salaries. You'll be surprised about the salaries for sure, because a lot of people have people on salaries and it's not legitimate according to the state. We'll talk about rest and meal periods. That's where we find the most legal violations. Overtime, California sick leave, when you have to reimburse employees. So we'll hit all the really basic wage and hour things that's really going to help you to prevent a lawsuit. Our employees are very educated nowadays. And so it's very important for you to be educated too, because I've seen too many small business owners lose everything over not handling the labor laws correctly. I had one client that came to me that was like, first time I met him, he was in a labor lawsuit over these issues. And he had worked all of his life in a franchise chicken restaurant, was able to buy them out from the owner that was retiring. And he ended up losing all five of his restaurants had to close because he didn't know labor laws. And then we're going to talk about how you guys can improve the performance of your employees, because a lot of owners I find are very intimidated by having to address employee behavior. So we're going to talk about how to set clear expectations, how to give them feedback, because the younger workforce has a hard time taking criticism. So we're going to teach you how to do it in a way that's more readily acceptable. And then we'll talk about what's the process to take if you do need to let somebody go. And what's the process we want to start writing them up in the interim time. So that'll be that week. And then week 7, we'll be going through menu engineering. So we'll talk about how to create a menu that will really sell and make a profit for you, how to format things. Once we figure out what's the most profitable things on your menu, there's certain key point or places that you should place them so that people will buy those kind of things. We'll talk about the importance of describing your food in an appetizing way so that it'll sell. And then we'll talk about some strategies of suggestive selling with your sales team, because it's much more profitable for you to get your people to sell extra items in your business, because you make so much more profit. All you really have then is the food cost, because you already have the labor on hand. So we'll give you some of these strategies that some of the big guns out there understand, and so that you can, make the most available profit. And then we'll have a topic where we go through marketing. So we'll introduce we'll cover some basics, because some people don't have the basics, but we'll talk about your website and social media and some ideas for things that you can do for networking. And also we'll talk about the do's and don'ts if you're into couponing. That is always a favorite. And then the last week we'll talk about some things to expand your business. So we'll talk about work-life balance. We'll talk about are you ready to expand? And if you are, what are the things that you have to have in place before you do it? And we'll have a guest speaker that week who is started out as a small small food truck and is just getting ready to move into their brick and mortar and is doing a lot of bucks out of that place. And then we're going to talk about, I put here accounting system, but actually it's funding your business, but that's all going to start with your accounting system. So we're going to talk about, the 5 C's of creditworthiness. We're going to talk about your debt service ratio. We're also going to have a guest speaker that week talking about, what are the common pitfalls that people fall into if in making their applications, how you have to plan if you want to. Often many of us have to plan if we want to finance, because sometimes we'll take a different strategy. If we're not going to be wanting to get funding to buy equipment or expand, we might have more of a tax advantage plan to save on taxes. And but if we're wanting to actually get lending, we may have to take a different strategy. So that's pretty much the whole program in a nutshell. It's the things that people come to us mostly that say, hey, how do I do this? I'm struggling with this. But it's also the things that they don't come and ask for because they don't have the knowledge that they need, that these things even exist or that they need to be taken care of. So I really feel that, if you come to the program, you're going to walk away with just a wealth of knowledge that it would take you probably years on your own if you've never had any restaurant management or ownership to ever be able to comprehend. So you can, there's a link here and I'll put this in the chat as well. And this is where you can go to sign up to get on the waiting list for the program. The program's probably going to start around August 1st. It's been delayed a little bit. It will be available in English and they're working on getting it available in Spanish. So are there any questions that anyone may have for me about the program?
Well, there is one question.
Mm-hmm.
You see it, get back here to the question. And it's how long is the class or the training?
Well, there's the class, there's 8 modules. So there's 8 weeks and there's 16 one-hour modules. So you can, if you take 2 a week, it'll take you 8 weeks, but if you work through those much quicker, it's all self-driven on the time frame. So, but I would expect that if you watch the module, each module will be about 1 hour, and then there might be about 30 minutes of side work, homework kind of activities. Each module will also have like a 10-question like little quiz to to confirm that you guys understood the information. And there'll be opportunities there to ask questions through the portal and also hook up one-on-one with an advisor, hopefully here through the SBDC. So we're here the whole time to help everyone make it through the program and just, we want everyone to be successful.
Well, it sounds like a great program, and it's so good to see our mom and pop restaurants getting some assistance. Not a big fan of chains and franchises. I love the mom and pops, and I want to see them succeed. And unfortunately, they're at a disadvantage, and we're going to correct that right with this program right here.
There you go. Definitely.
So also, there was a question. Another question, how long, well, not how long is the training program, but it was actually the next question, which was when can you apply for the grant? And I'll take that one.
Okay.
Even though I don't plan on answering a lot of grant questions today, that's for July. But the city regulation on that and the city rule, which all that information will be out in just a couple of weeks, is that you can apply once you're halfway through the training. You do have to, I believe, complete the training, but this process is it's a detailed process. There's a lot of information the city needs. It's if you're looking to make a quick buck in a short period of time, it's not going to happen. But it's like all kinds of funding sources; they take a little bit of work. So there will be some work behind that. And but if halfway through the training, you will be required to have your business plan complete and all other aspects. Once the training is complete, you will receive a certificate of completion, which will allow you to apply for the city grant. So there, I answered 2 city grant questions when I said I wouldn't. So,
and from what I saw a question earlier, is it just for restaurants? I was told that it was for food businesses. Do you know anything different on that, Kelly, or is that a question we'll have to get answered on the 12th?
I think it's going to be for all food businesses, like even if you're a caterer, if you are in some other type of food operation, maybe even beverages, I think would benefit greatly from it as well, particularly those that are beverage type businesses that sell food. So I think that there's a lot of different ways I think it would benefit a lot of different food businesses.
Yeah. Yeah, the kind of the information we're sharing today is information that I share with people that I work with that are starting up cottage food, catering. I mean, cottage food, you don't have as many employees, so some of that kind of stuff wouldn't apply as much. But for, farmers markets, food trucks, all those kind of things, this is going to be really critical information for you.
Mhm. And some cottage food businesses can have employees, and I still think it'd be incredibly valuable.
Yeah.
Okay,
The-
so
Yeah,
to
the one
enroll,
thing I
ask for
find,
your,
I'm sorry.
okay, the next question was to enroll and ask for your current business information. What if we're a new one and we want to open one? What do you put in the form, since it's a required field? I would just, I am not familiar with that yet, so I'm not exactly sure, but it is open to businesses that are existing businesses and those wanting to start a business. So maybe it is just something that you can put in. For example, if it's sales, maybe it's $0.00 just to get you through the application process. But you are eligible for both startup and for actual existing businesses. Celeste, I'll let you answer this one. Are there any costs associated to take the program?
No, absolutely not. It's all absolutely free. And what I love about it too is like, because we're doing it, everything will be recorded. There'll be recorded lessons. You'll have your own portal where you have all your private info, where you'll do your activities and things and interact with us. It's great because you don't even have to worry about, can I fit it into my schedule? Do I have Tuesdays off or Wednesdays or whatever? It's like, you can fit it into any time. I don't know if there's a time frame that you have to have it completed. I'm believing it'll be open for quite some time, so you'll have ample time to get it finished if you're working through the program, but it won't be open indefinitely.
Okay, good stuff. And I like the flexibility of it, being able
Mhm.
to take it at home and being able to get the information, but still great valuable information and available with a great amount of flexibility.
Yeah, we tried to develop so it wasn't just like giving you a theory. We're going to tell you about it, but then you're going to actually see it being done. So I think that really helps a lot because you'll actually get the opportunity to try it and hear what the benefits are. And you'll have a lot of my experience of things that I can tell you are hints and tricks that'll save you a lot of, lot of wasted time and money doing things.
Yeah, the flexibility I love because, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, that'll consume every restaurant owner that I know.
Yeah,
So then
definitely.
when do you schedule an in-person meeting for this? So
Yeah.
makes it a little bit more difficult. So just going through the chat, the webinar chat box. Thank you, Maureen, for all the additions that you have made here. We do have information on the EIDL SBA webinar for tomorrow that's in there where you can register. Also, we're seeing the food management program right there where you can go in and register. So it's great information in here. Thank you for the nice greetings, and that'll be about it.
Someone put a question. The online application says it will take 5 months to complete. That's not my interpretation. When I developed the program, it was eight, the 8 weeks or 16 topics.
Mhm.
So I don't anticipate, maybe by the time getting the grant done, getting the grant payment might be that long, but I guess that'll be a question we'll have to ask when we have our sponsors here next week.
Yeah, and being a new program, a lot of information will be flying in at different times. So this is why we're just previewing it today, so everybody can enjoy their 4th of July holiday and come back on the 12th, and we'll be ready to rock and roll this program. So excited.
All right. Hope to see you guys there in the classes.
Okay. Well, that'll wrap up today, number 282 in our webinar series. Great restaurant training. We'll be talking about it in July. We'll be talking about more with the City of Bakersfield grant program and the requirements. And we'll be back talking about it on July 12th with the other providers, the Bakersfield College Launchpad and the Kern County Black Chamber of Commerce. For Celeste Young-Ramos, I'm Kelly Bearden. We'll see you next time. Enjoy your 4th of July holiday. Bye-bye, everybody.